I will be talking about post-traumatic stress symptoms in this video. I do not know if Britney has PTSD or a form of it, but that is a personal matter, and for the purposes of this video, actually the detail isn't important. The only thing I know is that in her own words, she described herself as being traumatized, of having serious mental trauma, and at times freezing in response to the presence of others, which are indicative of some kind of post-traumatic stress symptom. But I have been very careful to not assign a diagnosis to Britney in this video. It would be very inappropriate for me to do so, or for anyone else to do so for that matter, besides her own doctor. So I think that is an important detail. However, I do want to mention the way such a diagnosis is assigned, as I do think it is relevant here. Like many other mental health conditions, PTSD is diagnosed when a certain number of symptom-based criteria are met. However, this doesn't mean that some post-traumatic symptomatology can't still exist, despite not qualifying for the full diagnosis. I would like you to bear that in mind when I talk about post-traumatic symptoms in this video. People have a lot to say about Britney's dance videos. They are unlike videos that we are used to seeing of her. They are not highly polished, choreographed, or edited, and they seem kind of odd, I guess. Going from million-dollar sold-out shows all choreographed to perfection to something very, very unlike that is quite confusing. But I have a slightly different opinion on her dance videos than some other people have, and I would like to share that. But to understand why this change might actually be a good thing, or at least definitely not a bad thing, we first have to understand some psychology stuff. So, I'm going to talk about schemas and the way information is stored in the brain. Now, our knowledge, experiences, ideas are all stored in mental structures called schemas. These schemas group ideas together in clusters. So, when we think of something, say a banana, other ideas in the cluster also become activated. For example, when we think of banana, we might also think of yellow, or the way a banana tastes. We might think of monkeys and milkshake, and of other fruit perhaps. All these things are ideas that get activated when we think of the word banana. Additionally, all of this information is stored contextually, meaning our thoughts and feelings are also coded with this information. So, for example, say if you were to go out and eat, and afterwards you got gastro and you were the sickest you have ever been in life, your stomach hurt, everything that went in would quickly come back out again, and you were miserable, then the chances are that whenever you think of that restaurant, now you will also be reminded of that same sick feeling you got when you got unwell. So much so that not only will you not want to eat at that restaurant again, it might even put you off the type of food that you were eating as well. Now, when it comes to Britney, from a young age, she has always loved to dance. We know that about her. It's actually a key reason she became the superstar she is today, and she's an incredible performer. So throughout her life, she was probably collecting all these ideas about dance that were positive. Because of her career, she was able to pick her family out of poverty. When she got famous, her family were really struggling, and she became known for being this really beautiful starlet that could dance really well. Now, in the conservatorship, I suspect that things changed a bit. She was overworked, she was tired, she was exhausted, she was being coerced into labor that she didn't want to do, and a lot of this labor would have involved dancing, meaning that perhaps dance was no longer just this amazing thing that reminds her of positive experiences, that reminds her of an important part of her identity. but it also might have become something that was associated with stress, being tired, and feeling exploited. The thing with the human brain is that it always wants to try to protect itself. It wants to try to stop experiences that have happened that have been negative from happening again. Survival is incredibly important to any organism, and negative associations tend to be more potent than positive ones, meaning that because of bad experiences, something you love can turn into something you hate or something that just doesn't feel good anymore. Now, this is all speculation. This is something that I've been stewing on for a little while, but this is the meaning that I interpret from Britney's dance videos. What's amazing about what I see Britney doing is that she is rediscovering something she used to love by expressing it in a different way. She isn't trying to learn choreography, which historically we know she is really great at, but she is still using dance in a creative way to express herself. So instead she's freestyling. She's doing moves that she feels great doing, moving her body in a way that we haven't really seen before. But it means that she can create new ideas of what dance means to her that don't necessarily have these negative associations or remind her of previous negative experiences that she has. From a cognitive standpoint, it's a very effective method of rediscovering your identity, rediscovering the things that you love without necessarily being associated with some of the things that have happened in the past. Basically, she is creating another branch in her little schema of dance that doesn't necessarily have her dad's abuse attached to it, quite frankly. And I can't hammer on this point enough to describe to you how important this is. After abuse, especially if it's a long duration of abuse, victims of abuse can often feel like they've lost some of their identity, that some of their identity has been taken away from them, especially if, because of the abuse that they suffered, they no longer feel like they can partake in the things that they used to love, and the things that used to define them or give them a sense of identity in some way. Often people can feel a separation from themselves, almost like that they no longer recognize themselves, they no longer feel like themselves, and they can no longer take joy or pleasure from the things that they used to enjoy because this awful experience has happened to them and it's changed the way that they feel about things in life. Being able to go back to the things that one loves is really important in reclaiming some control that may have been stripped of you. I know that it's incredibly painful for someone to have loved something so deeply and no longer being able to love that thing because some awful, terrible, malicious person has hurt them in such a way that their own experiences of joy are altered. It's a very jarring experience. The second reason why I feel like her dancing videos aren't a bad thing and why I'm actually enjoying this path she is taking in doing her little Instagram thing is because there is an actual, tangible, beneficial reason as for a traumatized person to engage in physical activity. And to understand this, we need to understand the brain after trauma. And we have to understand why trauma responses exist in the first place. So, fight or flight is a mechanism the body uses to protect itself when it perceives danger. We call it fight or flight, but actually there seems to be multiple survival mechanisms that actually exist. It's an autonomic response to high levels of stress, i.e. it happens automatically without us thinking about it, it just kicks in. When this response is triggered, the body kicks into action and a few things happen. Adrenaline and cortisol are released. These hormones cause the heart to pump faster, the digestive tract to slow down, blood sugar to rise. The body gets ready to send energy to your muscles, your pupils dilate. Sometimes you get tunnel vision. So a lot of physical responses are happening in just a few moments. Now, when this happens, it becomes really hard to think. All your body's resources are going into keeping you alive because it perceives a threat. But that also means that you're in a state of hyperarousal and hypervigilance. You become ultra aware of anything that may be perceived as a threat. You become very anxious and you startle easily. You may feel like you're frozen, like a deer in headlights kind of feeling, and you might feel immobile, like you are unable to move. Now, getting out of this state is extremely important when you have post-traumatic stress symptoms. It can be pretty difficult to do because your prefrontal cortex gets disrupted when the fight or flight response is activated. Your prefrontal cortex is this part of the brain in the front. It's where a lot of your executive functioning or more complex mental processes such as planning and rationalizing happens. Often in these periods, it can feel like you're reliving and re-experiencing your trauma all over again. And all the while, your body thinks that something life-threatening is about to happen to you. A major part of recovering from these symptoms is to try to get this response back under control and trying to prevent it from being triggered so often. A way of coping with this overactivation is physical activity or somatic experiencing. Basically, it's attempting to metabolize or use up all of this cortisol and adrenaline in your body so that your body can return to baseline. Not only that, but studies show that exercise through trauma can disrupt intrusive thoughts and memories and be a way of anchoring or grounding oneself to the present when having flashbacks. It can lead to higher or in an increase in positive emotion. It helps with coping and motivation and can lead to feelings similar to that described by Britney of freedom. It can also lead to a sense of self-efficacy and accomplishment, something that is often diminished in abuse dynamics such as Britney's. So when we look at Britney spinning in circles, dancing and moving her body, we might look at it with a critical eye because we may not understand what exactly is happening or what exactly the motivation is behind what she's doing, or it just might not look like what we deem to be acceptable, especially from what we knew of her once to be. It's easy to ridicule what we don't understand. However, from a more clinical perspective, I see someone that is using a positive coping mechanism that may actually ameliorate some of the physical symptoms she may be having due to the trauma she has experienced. And this is just her dancing videos. This is without even mentioning the yoga, the meditation, the animal therapy that she says that she's engaging in. In my opinion, these are all behaviours conducive of someone doing their best to heal from years and years of trauma. So I'm going to say it. Britney is doing great and her dance videos are exactly what she needs to be doing. And when I say that, I don't mean that she is acting in a way that isn't different from what we knew her to be. I'm not saying that some of her behaviors don't deviate from the norm somewhat, especially in terms of pop stars of her status and her wealth. I'm not saying that she isn't still suffering from the things that have happened to her. It's extremely likely that she is. What I'm saying is that the behavior we're seeing is indicative of someone that is meaningfully engaging in measures that will lead to increases in her mental health, well-being, and quality of life. And that has always been and will always be the most important thing to consider in all of this. Everything she is doing in order to recover is great. It's exactly what she should be doing. Now, I know this good. Now, I know this is going to upset some people because I know a lot of her Instagram posts, especially, have been somewhat inappropriate in some people's perspectives. This is going to be something that I'm going to address in a video in the future, actually. So stay tuned and subscribe if you would like to see that. And this has been The Science to Being Human. Thank you for watching. Tell me how you feel about it in the comments, and we'll see you next time. I will be talking about post-traumatic stress symptoms in this video. I do not know if Britney has PTSD or a form of it, but that is a personal matter, and for the purposes of this video, actually the detail isn't important. The only thing I know